Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Titan Law. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with Dr. Zorodzai Maroveke, a dental surgeon who has successfully lobbied for the legalization of industrial hemp. Enjoy this informative and inspirational conversation. Dr. Zorodzai Joy Tanaka Maroveke, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you for having me, Trevor.
You know, I love this show because I've gotten to know people's middle names, and they've got beautiful names, which they hide. So, Zorodzai, you are a practicing dental surgeon.
True.
You are the founder and CEO of Zimbabwe Industrial Hemp Trust. You are the vice president of the Cannabis Industries Association of Zimbabwe. We're just setting the scene there as to who Dr. Maroveke is. But let's go to your education, 2010 to 2015. Or before we get to 2010, 2015, where did you do your primary education? Where did you do your secondary education?
Okay, I went to school at Blakiston Primary, and then I did my secondary education at Teenwood High School.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we were the pioneer students. This was new school, so we were the first students until I finished my O-levels. And at that time, the school was not offering sciences, so my mom moved me to Spaces College, of all places. At Teenwood High School, I was actually the head girl. So you can imagine, So you can imagine being moved from a formal school to Spaces College. It was like a nightmare, but I mean, I'm really grateful because then it just geared me up for university type of lifestyle. Yeah.
In what way?
Well, you mind your own business.
Yeah.
You just learn to tolerate and accept people, the people that are diverse, because at Spaces you had kids from all over, just multiracial. You're also mixing with kids that are repeating, and you also have the tertiary education side, and so you just it just improves your social skills, which I think, of course, being in a formal school where I was a head girl from probably Form 2 to Form 4 probably affected my my social skills, and it was good.
You learned to be independent.
Yeah.
And then from Spaces College?
I had a gap year, and I actually decided to be a maid, just for the fun of it.
Where was that?
I actually worked for the public residence in Gun Hill, but I ended up actually being a tutor, like a math and English tutor. But the job description was actually, they were looking for a maid. But when I got there, they were like, oh, you're overqualified for this job. So I became like a childminder for like a year, and I actually raised a lot of money. And then I went to school. That's when I left for China in 2010.
That's an interesting thing to do, to be a maid after doing your O-levels, after O-levels, eh?
Yeah, after my A-levels.
A-levels.
Yes.
You become a maid.
Yeah, my brothers lost their minds.
What did that teach you?
Oh my God, it was such an amazing experience because I was 18 going to 19, and I had teenagers, like a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old, and their mom was not around at that time, and I had to pick them from school. I had to make sure they do their homework, and my boss was just like, he wanted reports, So I was literally like a PA, au pair type of thing, and it was a whole new experience for me. And my boss wouldn't say much, but he taught me so much. And the sad thing was the kids got so attached to me, and I hadn't actually told them I was actually on my way out, and it was quite emotional. But I mean, I just learned so much about children, the fact that I was, a teenager going to be a young adult. I just learned so much about raising teenagers. It was
you say
just
your
amazing.
boss taught you so much.
Yeah, you don't used to say
Such
much,
as?
but leadership. He was just too organized. I mean, he's a businessman, but just the way he used to do things, and it would just force you to be responsible, to report on time. He would never really tell you, I want this on time, but you'd just be forced to do it. And yeah, he was more like a father as well, you know. But
I'm fascinated and impressed in a way by the fact that you could actually, because for some people, they would say, this is below me. Fine, being an au pair might not be below you, but the attitude would be, you know, I've done my A's. Hey, I'm not going to do this stuff. What made you do that?
well, it was like a joke. It started off like a joke. I think in 2009, 10, I think that's the time where in Zim, everyone was getting paid a flat salary of $100. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
And 5 Avenue Spa at that time was the only supermarket that would open till like 12 midnight, and I used to live in that area. So my brothers and I just said, let's go to the shops, like around 10. And then we saw this advert, like made, and then it said driver's license, and we just thought it was so funny. And they wanted math and English, and we're like, what kind of maid? So just out of a joke, I took the number, I made a call because I was sitting at home. And then, you know, they said, okay, you can come for the interview. I get there and I'm seeing this Greek man, and I'm like, whoop, okay. And then next thing is like, well, you kind of overqualified, but, you know, let's give it a shot. I didn't have a driver's license then. It's like, well, you have a driver, we move around with the girls and everything. And then next thing, the job description changed when I got there. I couldn't really be the maid. They already had like 2 maids at the house. And then I ended up doing homework, tutoring the math and English. So I just got promoted as soon as I got to the job. So yeah, it was quite a good experience. I raised a lot of money because everyone was actually earning $100. And I think my mom was like, you're earning way more than me and you're a maid. It was so hilarious. My brothers at first were like, what? You think we paid Cambridge for you to be a maid? It was so funny. But eventually, they actually appreciated it.
Spirit of adventure, Zorodzai?
Yes.
Yeah.
Risk taker, daredevil, anything of that sort. That's me.
And then after the gap year, what then happens to you?
I then got a Chinese government scholarship, and then I left for Shanghai for language school. I was in Tongji University, School of Linguistics. I did my 1 year of Mandarin. You know, it was okay. It was good. I ended up being a level 5 and left 2011. Oh, 10. I don't remember. 2010, I went to Shanghai Jiaotou University School of Medicine until 2015. So I practiced dentistry for 5 years. So in total, I had 6 years in China. Yeah.
So you got your
my bachelor's degree.
Yes. And the ability to practice as a dental.
Yeah, I had to return home and do my internship.
Yeah.
Yeah, for 1 year.
You couldn't do that in China?
I could have. I actually had an opportunity to do a master's, but then something just convicted me that I needed to come back home.
What was that? What convicted you to come back home?
It was so effortless. Like I think 3 years before I graduated, I would ask myself this question: what happens when you graduate? And it was always the same answer. You need to go home. There's something for you. And I didn't understand what it was, but the conviction was so strong. And I used to tell my fellow Zimbabweans that, look, I'm going home. They'll be like, she's joking. When the time comes, she's not going to go. She'll stay. So most people stay to teach English. But then I actually had a master's scholarship on offer. And I said, I'm not going to take this. And then I think in 2013, my granddad passed away, and that was just like the worst time of my life, because I just got back to China, and then he passed away. And you know, he was a national hero, and I was just seeing pictures and people. I was just devastated.
Who was your granddad?
My grandfather was the late Kumbirai Kangai.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was like, no, I'm going back home. And there was this urge that I just need to give back. Because I just felt like I was a beneficiary in some way, and I was like, I need to go and give back. And also looking at how China is building their own country, I was like, I can't be part of this. I need to go back. So I think in 2013, 14 is when I just bumped into Hemp, and then that just changed and just made my conviction like really strong. Like, okay, I think I know why I need to go back home.
Before you had this conviction that you wanted to come back home, but some of your friends and relatives set you down and said, "Are you out of your mind? You want to go back home?" Talk to me about that.
Well, of course, you know, there were fellow Zimbabweans that lived in the same city, and you know, they would ask me, "Are you crazy? This was 2015, like, around, especially the time that I was about to graduate. They're like, no, Zoe, Zim is tough, the political situation. They would come up with all these. I was oblivious to all of this. I said, you know what? I don't know, but I just think I'm going to be fine. I just feel like God is telling me to go. And they just thought I was crazy. And I called my family. My brother was like, no, you can't come here. My dad, he's, he supports anything that I want to do. He said, well, this is your country, come home. My mom didn't have a problem with it. She just thought, well, you'll be just fine. But my brother was like, no, you've got an opportunity to go to Australia. You've got a Chinese government scholarship and you can get a job there. Why come home? I was like, you wouldn't understand, but when I come, you will. You'll get it. And that was it.
So you had, in 2013, stumbled upon a dress made from hemp, and you began researching on this type of cannabis. Tell me about stumbling into that dress made of hemp and that whole experience, the world that it opened for you.
Yeah, it's just a very funny story. I was on my way from school, going home, and then there's this shop. I just used to see it every day, but I just never really bothered. So I walked in there, this old Chinese lady, she's the shopkeeper there, and I'm like, oh, this is a really nice dress. It looked really nice on me. I bought the dress, went home, and when I got it, I was like, I've never seen this fabric before. What kind of material is this? So the next day, I passed through the shop again, and I asked the Chinese lady, and she responded to me in Chinese. So I actually didn't understand. I just asked her, just shema puliao, and then she says, ma liao. I was like, ma liao? That's not even cotton. That's not anything I've heard of. So I asked her to actually write the characters down because I didn't even know what Malia was. And then I went on the Chinese Google, Trevor. That's like Baidu. And drugs in China is a big deal. They have the most prohibitive laws when it comes to narcotics. A speck of cocaine, you're gone. Marijuana, you're gone. So I opened this and I'm like, what? From the search engine, it's just marijuana leaves popping up everywhere. I'm like, what is going on? So I started researching, then I started translating. And I realized they were talking about cannabis being a fiber crop that can make textiles. I was like blown away. So of course I then resorted to my Google and then I started reading, and to my surprise, cannabis had different types of cannabis. And I'm coming from a medical background, so I kind of had a clue on, it having some medicinal properties, but I had no idea, there was this aspect of a fiber crop that could do so many other things. So, of course, that self-interest, I started reading, researching, and I said, look, something is wrong. China has such prohibitive laws when it comes to drugs and narcotics, but how come they've never criminalized industrial hemp for the past 2,000 years or more? And they've made paper, and they hold half of the global patents on cannabis. Something is wrong, considering the relationship
half
we have.
Half of the global patents on hemp.
Yes, they have most of the
hemp.
Intellectual property on cannabis in general.
Wow.
Including industrial hemp.
Wow.
And for me, that was like an eye-opener. I said, something is off here, because considering the relationship our government has with the Chinese government, these are some of the things they should have been teaching us and showing us these opportunities. I said, where's the problem in Zimbabwe? So I started also looking at where we were with this cannabis debate. And I realized that there had been conversations. I was not the first lobbyist on marijuana in this country, but I was successful because there was also global momentum. So that kind of helped. But what I discovered was there were people trying to have this conversation with government, but the angle they were coming from was mostly the recreational angle, which is very difficult to start negotiating.
So let's do this. Let's split it up. So you've got medicinal cannabis.
Yes.
You've got industrial hemp.
Yes.
And you've got recreational cannabis.
Yes.
What are we talking about here?
Okay, so when you say, everybody knows marijuana for its notoriety, right? When you're talking about recreational cannabis, this is the marijuana that is used for spiritual rituals, people that smoke it for fun, people that make food out of it, and all those kind of things. And then when you're talking about medicinal cannabis, this is where we are saying governments have formalized, have regulated the use of marijuana to make pharmaceutical products. This is like real business. It's like anything else in the pharmaceutical industry. Yes, there is an element of nutraceuticals, like, your essential oils and stuff. But really, we are talking about the pharmaceutical business. This is some serious stuff.
Okay.
Then when you talk of industrial hemp, this is a subspecies of the cannabis family, which is a fiber crop. It can make textiles, it can make construction material. It's a whole different...
It's non-narcotic.
Yes. You can't smoke it. It's useless.
Okay.
It's useless.
So what then excited you? So you come into the conversation in Zimbabwe. Where do you find the conversation? People focusing on what? On medicinal cannabis or recreational cannabis?
At that point, people
What
were
was
still...
the lay of the land as far
At
as...
that point, in 2015, when I got back, people were still fixed on recreational. It was the Rastafarians fighting for their rights, saying, look, we need our space,
we want to smoke this
yeah,
thing.
we've got the Binga Tonga. It was, the medicinal cannabis wasn't really a conversation that was really in the public domain. People knew about it. You have the traditional leaders, they'll tell you they've been using this for 50 years. But then, because it's not scientific, no one really accepts, nobody really, wants to embrace that these guys have got IKS, this is indigenous knowledge systems, but nobody really bothers until it was packaged from the European, the Americas, and we are all seeing these headlines, oh, America's legalized, then all of a sudden it was acceptable. Now, when I got here, remember, I'm just a graduate, an undergraduate.
You're 25 years old.
I'm 25.
25.
My English is really bad because I've been speaking Chinese like 80% of my day. So I get back, my English is really poor. My mom is surprised, like, what happened to you? And I'm like, well, guys, I know I studied dentistry, but this is what I really want to do. She's like, you mean like you went to school to study dentistry and you're back to lobby for marijuana? I said, yeah. She called my father. My dad was like, well, the problem is, if you stop her, she's still going to do it anyway. So we might as well just try to understand what she's trying to do and support her. So my mom has a legal background. So I said, Mom, I think the problem is somewhere in the legislation. I don't know how to navigate. I need your help. She says, well, because it's drugs, probably somewhere dangerous drug. Let's find this Dangerous Drugs Act. That's where it all started off from. And then we understood that, okay, this was under the Ministry of Health. There was a blanket legislation. Cannabis is a narcotic, full stop. And I was going in for the big battle, to go and convince the Minister of Health and say, can you look into this? Now, because I'm a doctor, the first thing people think I want to talk about is medicinal cannabis, which is so difficult. By the time I want to get to my conversation, I'm like, no, I get that it makes medicines, but I'm here to talk about industrial hemp. That's what I was interested in because I was looking at the socioeconomic impact. And I had already realized that medicinal cannabis it's an elitist sector. I would say it's predominantly, I don't want to be racial, but you understand what I mean, right? So it's very exclusive because it's capital intensive. So with that, I was like, how will the ordinary Zimbabwean participate? Of course, whilst I was away, I would read, I would understand that tobacco is a dying sector, so what's going to happen? What's the plan B cash crop? And that's when I started identifying that there could be so much potential in industrial hemp, but we can only find out if we remove the biggest mountain, which is the regulatory and legislative barrier.
So let's drill down into industrial hemp. What it does, what's the potential, and the multiplicity of things that it offers. Let's drill down into that.
Yeah, so when we say industrial hemp, we are looking at a wide array of value chains here. It can make textiles. Unfortunately, I didn't come wearing any hemp stuff today, but you could get your textiles from that. You can make bricks. I actually think in Cape Town, Tony Budden actually he's got a house made from hemp in Cape Town. This is very close to home. You can make automobile, brake pads, absorbents. You can make the
fishing
interior
nets.
You can also make that from the textile side because ropes, nets,
paper production,
food aspect. If you go to your Belgravia, there's a natural food store just next to Pariah. You can actually find hemp food there. Greendale food lovers, you can find hemp food there. And all these are imported products. You can also make oils. It can also give you like these nutraceuticals.
So this is the industrial hemp.
It
can also produce the oils that come from medicinal.
Yeah.
That medicinal.
Yeah.
hemp.
You can make
also
edible
produces.
oils,
Yeah.
like your olive oil, like your essential oils. Then you can also get the nutraceuticals, like you'd
Yeah.
have your essential oils like lavender, eucalyptus, all that stuff. And it can make some medicines that can cure certain types of cancers and so on. So it can do most of the things that your marijuana.
Except that you can't smoke it.
You can't smoke it. It's
Okay.
useless.
Okay.
You just waste a plant if you're going to rip it apart just because you think you can smoke it. It's got, you see, what makes the difference, the major difference is in the psychoactive compound, tetrahydrocannabinoid, delta 9. And that THC is what determines.
That's now going all over my head.
Well, okay, let me just
Yeah.
put it, what we're saying is that in cannabis, there's a psychoactive compound called THC. Now, this THC is what determines, the concentration is what determines if you smoke it, what happens. But then now we are finding that in the industrial hemp strains, the THC levels are so insignificant. So insignificant compared to your marijuana or indica strains. So that's how my argument has started to say, why are you criminalizing this when it's harmless? Can we remove it? Can we bifurcate at law and say industrial hemp is just like chibage, it's just like maize, and medicinal cannabis will stay under the dangerous drugs and medicines and all that regularly, because of course we're getting into the pharmaceutical.
So Zorodzai, you come into Zimbabwe in this particular sector, and the conversation is the Rastafarians are wanting their rights to smoke this thing. The doctors are focusing on the medicinal side. Nobody's seeing what you're seeing.
Yeah, at that time, nobody had a clue what I was talking about.
Right.
Actually, the doctors were nowhere in the space of even the medicinal cannabis.
Right.
Because, it's a very sensitive issue. There's this perception. So no one really wanted to be...
The churches are against it. There are moral issues.
I would just do like simple conversations with church leaders, business people. And you know what I realized is, they are very comfortable with this industrial hemp. They're excited, but no one wants to hear about this marijuana stuff. So I then knew how to angle and then also how to package my story. I realized I'm not here to talk about recreational cannabis. I'm not even here to talk about medicinal cannabis. I'm here to talk about banje making ropes. People look at me like, what? Okay, come here. Let's hear what you have to say. And that's how I got the ball rolling.
But you can't call it mbanje, can you?
Well, unfortunately, in Shona, we are
That's
very
what it is.
limited.
Okay.
Because the lingo, we will have to come up with a word like they're trying to do in Malawi. We'll have to come up with some lingo that people can actually... Because when I used to do my radio interviews, I would then say mbanje no daga, mbanje singa daki, so that people could understand. But in Shona, you're going to be limited. There's no other word unless you just say hemp. But and some argue that hembe comes from hemp. So I don't know about that. But when I came, yes, the conversations, there was a parliamentarian, I think it's Honorable Mudarikwa, had tried, I think 7 years before, in parliament, and people made a mockery. They laughed at him when he tried to bring this issue up. Unfortunately, he didn't have facts to back him at that time because there wasn't that global momentum. But when I came, I had my facts, and there was global momentum, and people could see, okay, what she's talking about is happening in the States, happening in Canada, and that kind of helped. But yeah, lobbying was not going to be an easy journey.
The breakthrough for you was you did something on social media which got leaked to the office of president and cabinet. Talk to me about that.
So, I just did a concept note after... Okay, let me just take you to a very interesting bit. I think it was 2016 or 2015. There was a Zim Trade Expo where they do the awards, Exporters of the Year, and my brother had extra tickets because his company was part of. And then I just went, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna participate. I didn't even know what it was all about. So when I got there, the Minister of Industry and Commerce then was Honorable Ima, and I learned so much. That's the first time I learned trade deficit. I didn't even know what that meant. And all these companies are talking about problems in the industry and things like that. So in the end, the MC then says, okay, we're going to give 2 people an opportunity to ask the minister a question, questions. And then nobody raised their hand. I was like, these people are crazy. and there were big companies in there. I was like, these people are crazy. So I raised my hand, and I was the tiniest person in the room. And I said, Honorable Minister, if I told you I had a solution to some of the problems that have been raised in it, would you give me time in your office? And everybody was like, who is this girl? And you know what he said? He said, with me right now to my office. And then I got there and he said, what is it, young lady? And that's when I started breaking down my story. And he was like, you've come in my office to talk about cannabis. I said, yes. What if the suit you're wearing is actually me? He was in shock. He's like, you know what? I think you've got something going on there. Can you do a write-up? It took me time to put that, on paper. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. I kept procrastinating. That's when I did the concept note. It was like a 10-page document. And, I shared with my friends on social media, and somehow it then leaked to somebody who was in the president's office. And before I knew it, I got a call. I was scared. I was like, oh, no. It's not what you think. It's like, are you Dr. So-and-so who wrote this? I was like, yes. It's like, no, you're not in trouble. We're actually interested. And then that's how everything just... So I got confidence then from that call. And I was like, okay, these guys are very serious about this. They are seeing the opportunity. At that time with Zim Asset. So it spoke so much into value addition and beneficiation. And then one thing led to the other, Trevor.
One thing led to the other. And then 2016, you start lobbying the government, you start lobbying the stakeholders. What is other stakeholders rather? What position? What are you selling? What position? What's your proposition to everybody else? Those who are against Mbanje, which makes you excitable and all that kind of stuff, and those who are in support of medicinal. You're bringing in the hemp, which is non-narcotic. What proposition are you putting across?
Well, the thing is, because I had already put a disclaimer to say, look, I'm not here to talk about what you don't like.
Yeah.
I'm here to talk about something you don't know.
Okay.
And then people are like, okay. Whether it was church people, I got the same response. They were very receptive to the idea of industrial hemp. So what I only identified was where the problem was.
Right. Where was the problem?
The problem was in the legislation,
okay,
the regulations, the law itself. And then at that time, the first minister I wanted to lobby, of course, would be the Minister of Health, who was Dr. Parinyatwa then. And I said, do you see this? And he said, never saw it that way, but I think you've got something going on there. And it was the next minister and the next minister. Now remember, I am just a graduate. I'm just a happy little girl who's just going around knocking doors. I don't even care what I'm doing. I don't even know. I'm just like, let them hear it.
But why are you doing this?
And I'm thinking it's good for my country. That's all that's in my head. It's good for my country. I could see jobs. I'm like, yeah, it will create jobs. And we could get so much investment. Remember, I'm a layman at this time. There's no political acumen. There's no legal acumen. There is no economics whatsoever. It's just a little dentist who's excited, who's just knocking doors and just going like a free spirit. And then, now it gets serious. It got more serious than myself. And people say, look, what are you doing? These people will never listen to what you're saying. You're a young girl. Why would they even bother legalizing cannabis? I got the negative voices that are coming. And I'd run back to my mom. It's like, well, you said you believe in this and it's going to work out. So you just need to strategize. And I was like, yeah, but mom, I don't really care. I just want government to, and I really didn't want to be attached. I was like, government should just listen and get it over and done with. And then in 2017, that's when I met a lawyer. And he said, my dear, you're going to need a formal voice. Because right now you're doing this solo. It's not going to work. You're going to need a formal voice to communicate with government. At this point, you're not in business. So you need to create an organization that can speak. And that's when we founded the Zimbabwe Industrial Hemp Trust. I founded the Zimbabwe Industrial Hemp Trust with two of my friends, my ex-husband and my friend, the three of us. And I started writing to government formally. And then, that's when government started calling me in, participating in very serious conversations. And 2017 March was the first cabinet sitting that approved both medicinal cannabis and industrial hemp, because then there was a new team that was pushing for medicinal cannabis. And these guys were loaded. These guys were, big players in the tobacco sector, politically connected. And before you knew it, hemp was eclipsed. That's when I lost my mind. Yeah.
So, and the main purpose of the Zimbabwe Industrial Hemp Trust was to lobby government, education and awareness, investment promotion, research and development, and consultancy.
Yes.
But these guys with big bucks on the medicinal side come in and totally eclipse that.
Yes.
And you lose it?
I lost my mind.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was so mad. I think Dr. Parinyatwa would tell you she lost her mind. I was livid because I was like, why can't they see something that's much bigger than medicinal cannabis? Because medicinal cannabis, when it came, it threw so many big numbers, the billions. But it's how many people would be participating in the making of those billions. That was where my problem was. And then, of course, you then start conflicting with a number of politicians because you start talking about very sensitive things. So I said, no, I'm not going to let this slide. We are going to legalize industrial hemp in this country. And my grandma, who's got 1 hectare somewhere in Buri there, will be able to participate just like she's doing tobacco. So
What was the next thing?
the next thing was like, I needed a plan because I was hitting a lot of brick walls, hitting a lot of things. And at this time, I then realized there's serious political turmoil in the country. That's when it finally hit me like, oh my goodness, the political terrain is not that easy because I might talk to so-and-so and then so-and-so is offended that I spoke. So then I finally caught up with whatever was happening. And then I realized...
You lost your innocence.
I lost my innocence. And then in that moment, I realized I had lobbied most of the government ministers in Robert Mugabe's government, except one very crucial minister, and that was the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, and who was then the vice president and now the president of Zimbabwe. And I said, well, there's one person that I need to meet here, because my issue was the law. Can we get a bifurcation of medicinal cannabis industry at law? So then I fought my way to get a meeting. It was not easy. It was so difficult. Because his office was very sensitive at that time. I found my way there and I explained my story, and him being a lawyer, he's like, everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. We'll look into it. And that was it. I was mad. I was like, this old man just said, I'll look into it. I need more than that. I've got people trying to grab this concept from me. I need more than that. But those were his words. He's a man of few words. And I left and I decided to take a break. I started traveling. That's when I went to Malawi. I was seeing what they were doing. I started building relationships in China.
Tell me about what you saw in Malawi and what they were doing.
Malawi, I was the first Zimbabwean who was allowed on their pilot site. It was a protected government site in partnership with
Hemp pilot site,
yes.
yeah?
They were in partnership with a private player who is now a good friend of mine. And they had been doing trials for, I think, 4 years at that time, and researching and trying all different varieties and seeing what would work for their climate and their soil types. And that's when I learned, as SADC, we had so much to do. Zimbabwe just had to come on board. There was no option. Yeah, because it was not going to work for trade, because Malawi can only do so much, South Africa can only do so much. So Zimbabwe had to participate. So that encouraged me. And, she shared her journey. And then now I'd back up. So I started building my global network. So I started getting in touch with people who were doing the same thing in the US, people like Ryan Laughlin, a lot of people who had been first movers in the lobbying and legalization of cannabis. I got in touch with people in China, and I just stopped. I just kind of took a break from the Zim, setup, and there I was, building networks from Australia. One of the most powerful people who really supported me in my early lobbying days was Paul Benham. He's Australian, and he's like, look, I don't know you, I've never met you, but something in me tells me you're going to get it done. It took me 20 years. But young lady, if it takes you 5 years to get to get cannabis legalized in Zimbabwe, I'll be very surprised. So those voices were the ones that really made the big difference. Because these were people...
Encouraged you?
Yes, these were trendsetters. These are people who had succeeded at lobbying governments to finally change it after so many years. And they'll tell me, it's going to happen, just keep the faith. And I was very passionate. And I now had a team locally, with the trust. I had volunteers who came, people who came voluntarily to say, at no cost, we're going to help you. Now I had agronomists, I had lawyers, I had economists on board. And my family was still there to support me. Like now my brother, who's an agronomist, who used to say, don't come back to Zimbabwe, was now at the fore saying, you know what?
Just do this thing.
Let's do this. So I then, started building momentum outside, and then...
I always like to, I see right now the passion and everything else, but I want to ask the question, why are you doing this? Why were you doing it? Where is the inspiration coming from?
Trevor, to be honest, when I came back in 2015, I had to do my 1-year internship as a dentist, right, to get my license. And when I was practicing, they still pay you. It was good. It was a good salary at the end of the month. But then I realized there were so many people around me who were in problems all the time. And also realizing that there were people I went to school with who were unemployed. I would literally see them on the corners of the road, and I'm like, hey, what happened? I didn't finish school. My mom and dad died. This happened. So many stories. And I really wanted to help, but I couldn't. I was just limited. I just had no capacity. And that's when I sat down and I said, okay, my little dental salary might not be able to help all these people. Even sometimes it's even your own relatives. The black tax. Your own relatives have problems. And I said, what is it that I could do that could have a huge enough impact on all these people that they could have a chance and an opportunity to change their lives? And that's when I identified industrial hemp.
Wow.
Because then I'm saying, I'm looking at, of course, the environmental benefits of industrial hemp, how sustainable it is. I'm looking at what's going on with the tobacco sector, and it's new and it's innovative.
Oh, I want to press you there because you're okay. You are a dental surgeon. You got a salary, you're working, you're fine, but you're caring. What's getting to you is the fact that there's a sea of disenchantment and poverty around you, and that moves you to do this thing.
Yeah, that I can say was what then motivated you to say, you really, Zoe, you've got that idea, maybe this is the time, this is why you really need to push for this. So that when it stopped being about money, people would ask me, why are you doing this? You're not even getting paid for it. But then that was like, I'm doing this so that guy can stop having an excuse to be at the corner. Because then you see with all the opportunities that hemp presents, it's a choice. If you don't get your own angle in this whole sector and all these value chains, it's a choice. But then, of course, government had to remove that mountain. The first mountain was, let's remove this legal barrier.
And then there is SI 62 of 2018, production of cannabis for medicinal and scientific purposes, that comes out, but it doesn't take on board your passion.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
That is, of course, what drove me nuts, because it came out in 2018. This was already the new dispensation. Transition.
This is after President,
the
former Minister of Justice has said, I'll do something about it.
Yeah, now we are already, this is after the Operation Restore Legacy.
Yeah.
We are now in 2018. The minister is still Dr. Parinyatwa. And then SI 62 comes, headlines, BBC, CNN, Zimbabwe, the second country in Africa to legalize cannabis. And I'm looking at this legislation, I'm like, and everybody's excited. And I'm like, no, this is not what we discussed. It was exclusively medicinal cannabis. So then a new journey started. Now really fighting to say, no, you guys have to bring out hemp from all this. And then I just decided, actually I think that hemp should be under agriculture. I just made up my mind. And I think I'd had problems with the former Minister of Agriculture then, like we just never saw eye to eye. And then there was a new minister, the late
Parents Shiri.
Yes. And he was scary, man. He used to scare me so much. But I was like, you know what? He's now the minister. I just have to go for
So you went to him?
Yes.
And?
At first he was like, he knew about this marijuana thing, but this hemp thing, he was like, young lady, what are you really talking about? I've heard about it. And he had actually heard the commercial white farmers talk about hemp being the next cash crop. And he called me in and he sat me down. He said, explain. When I explained, he said, you know what, you've got something going on there, but we've got to challenge the legislation.
Right.
So we worked together closely and strategize. It was so much fun to some extent, because sometimes we would stay up late on phone calls, like, okay, so what are we going to do?
With the late parents Shiri.
Yes.
Wow.
And, you'd be like, okay, you need to talk to the Minister of Industry and Commerce, you need to talk to so-and-so, and, but he was more like a father eventually. Our relationship didn't start off well because, he was very, I don't know.
Former Air Force, military, yeah.
But with time, we got along, and he appreciated so much, like, you know what, you guys are the future. And for me, that was very encouraging to have someone like him say that.
And you finally make the breakthrough. 2019, industrial hemp is decriminalized.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
I'm exhausted at that point. I'm like, everyone is celebrating. I'm like, yeah, I'm just tired at this point. And I'm like, finally, I never thought this could happen. This is 4 years later after my journey, And this was, I think, it was on the 20th of September. And on 11 October 2019, that's when we launched the first sowing of industrial hemp seeds in Zimbabwe at the Harare Central Prison. And there was so much support from government. And yeah, it was like, wow, it can be done. Because many people told me, yeah, it's going to be difficult. You can't keep changing laws, And I was lobbying on an empty pocket. I didn't have people paying me to do this. But
you just lobbying for a cause.
Yes. My energy, I just had enough energy every morning to say, I won't let this slide. This has to be done. So yeah, that's 2019. Then we finally decriminalized industrial hemp, pending it being authorized by the Ministry of Agriculture. So yeah, to date, I think there's another SI that was finally.
And then you formed the Cannabis Industries Association of Zimbabwe. Talk to me about
that one. Yeah, that's a very interesting story.
Yeah.
You see, what happened was, many people knew I was the major driving force behind lobbying generally for cannabis. My lobbying was for industrial hemp, but it subsequently helps the legalization of medicinal cannabis. Now, like I said, it's predominantly male industry, and it's got the medicinal cannabis, that is. It's got a similar culture like you get in tobacco. People elbowing each other. It's very predatory. So you'd find that
there's corruption.
Yeah. So what happened now is, when we hit the headlines, Zimbabwe has legalized. I can tell you for a fact, we had so many countries coming in, countries that had probably never invested in Zimbabwe, coming in for this opportunity. People were excited because, remember, we were open for business. This was a new dispensation. So people came from any country you can think of. And they were very excited. And then they were disappointed, because then when they were on the ground, things were not what they seemed. So there were some policy issues. And I wasn't interested. I wasn't bothered. I was focusing on hemp. And most of these players then approached me and said, Dr. Maroveke, you've been lobbying government on these issues. Can you not assist us to communicate with government that these policies are not going to work, they're not attractive? And I said, no. Why? Because I felt that the investors themselves and the players interested in this sector were the ones causing the problem.
I see.
They were very fragmented, but they had overlapping interests. So why couldn't they come together? I said, the best I can do is if we come together. Not me, not you guys sending me to go and attack, and no. But if we come together as one voice in the cannabis sector, whether hemp, whether medicinal cannabis, and maybe in the future even recreational cannabis, we come together and say, Mr. Government, we have got mutual concerns, and we want to address issues 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you say? Government will respect you. Government will take you seriously, because government is not an animal. I've been working with them, and they can hear you, but it's the approach. So these guys were going to that guy, to that. It wasn't going to work. So then they agreed. Unfortunately, some people benefit from chaos.
Yes.
So the idea of creating this one body then would kind of cut out the whole corruption. That privilege, it just then disturbs a lot of things. So some people were not happy with this, and these were some government officials, like, why are they creating an association? They haven't even started the industry. So many attacks. But we knew what we were trying to achieve. So I started getting personal attacks, like, why are you guys creating this association? What is it for? And you have some people that are in bed, and these are rogue elements in your own. it was, but eventually, I think, because we created the association in late 2019, we faced so many challenges, threats, spanners in there. You can't even meet the authorities anymore.
Where are you now with as far as the Cannabis Industry Association is concerned?
Well, we eventually made a breakthrough because that was now early this year, just before the lockdown. We managed to have our conversations with the relevant authorities, and they heard the concerns, and they've actually reversed most of the issues that were a problem. The 40%, which was kind of like indigenization, the government has reversed that.
Is that in the hemp sector?
No. This was medicinal cannabis.
Medicinal.
Hemp did not have problems because we had kind of sorted that already. But now we've created an association that covers everybody, because in the future you might still have issues that you want to address, but as a body, as one voice. Because we also did not want to seem like we are excluding medicinal cannabis because our things are moving. But together, we are still a cannabis industry. There are times where we are going to intersect, So this year, of course, we managed then to be heard as an association, and government took our concerns very seriously. And most of the issues were actually addressed. And it's a better environment to invest in medicinal cannabis now. So investment looks better. There are still, small issues, where you come with maybe on negotiate the tax, things like that. Those are small issues. But I think if most investors who are watching this show today will tell you in 2018, 2019, it was really horrible. It was not attractive. But to date, the government has proven that, you can
So the
sit down.
60-40 is out of the window. It's now 100%. A foreign investor come to invest in medicinal hemp,
cannabis,
can do 100% investment.
Yes, and they can use, private land use is now allowed. It's not mandatory to be on that particular land or piece of land or there, which was a big issue. But these are things that I try to say to even young people. Government is not an animal. There is always an approach. There are always ways of communicating. There's always room for dialogue. So when we did that, then things moved. But when people were working individually, so fragmented, people were just complaining, but there was no progress.
Where are we then as far as your passion is concerned, which is hemp, industrial hemp? Where are we as a country?
As a country,
Yeah.
It's a very infant industry.
Right.
I'm very disappointed that the uptake for industrial hemp, even after we've put in the cultivation legislation, well, not we, because government has put that in place, but the uptake has been very slow.
Why?
I think we can attribute most of that to, of course, COVID disturbances. The investment we were expecting, of course, has been affected, but also people not having enough information on what is it that has been legalized, and what does it take for you to participate? Because you can get the permit, next thing you realize it's not easy to get hold of the seeds. It's not easy to get a market. These are now the real things. It's got nothing to do with government, because government has done what it needs to do. The enabling environment is there. So you'd find that a lot of people have been disappointed, even though the permit is only $200. But then you realize for hemp, where we are saying we wanted social inclusion, right? But then you realize you need the seeds. These had to be certified. You can't just be like seeds you got from your friend. So all those things. But then as a country, where we are with policy, we're in a good place to attract investment. But we might see this taking off maybe next year. Yeah. But I think we've got a long way to go, because we don't have the industries that are ready to take up the raw material. So we might see a lot of export of raw flowers, export of raw material out for maybe the first 2-3 years. Then later, as the industries are then set up, the infrastructure is there, you'll see a lot of value addition in the country.
You've done, there's been a China visit, has there?
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Well, this is like the guru, meeting the guru of industrial hemp in China. This guy has made anything you can think of: diapers, condoms. What do you call this? The battery, something that, I don't know, this lead thing that you put on battery on phones to reduce the temperature. Graphite, yeah. He's used graphite from hemp to make amazing stuff. Beer.
So you visited that plant?
Yes.
Who did you take with you there?
We went with government. No. It was a government trip. Well, we were with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Ministry of Agriculture, ourselves, and an interested investor who's interested in investing in this sector in Zimbabwe, a Chinese investor. So we actually went as a whole delegation. It was an eye-opener. And of course, for me, it was vindicating because I'm like, I'm not crazy. Now, people
This thing
realize
actually,
I'm
this
not crazy.
opportunity exists.
Yeah, we actually visited a factory where they were making the textiles for Levi's, the denim company. And these were just being prepared for export. So
in your view, what needs to be done to raise awareness, have investors interested in this thing? I know you've indicated that there's DRC, Malawi is already in that sector. What needs to be done in Zimbabwe to raise the profile of something that you've been so passionate about?
I think Zimbabwe has to understand its positioning in the region.
Yeah.
We are not a very competitive space at the moment because of our own challenges. And with that, you have to find ways of packaging yourself to be more attractive to investment. And I think the focus is obviously going to be a continuous panel beating of the policies, because when South Africa makes a move, we need to see, well, how is that move going to affect us? So it's going to be a continuous process of panel beating the policies so that we remain relevant, attractive, and competitive. So as we speak, there are still other things we've already realized that need to be tweaked if we are going to attract more in terms of investment. And our own people need to be educated about this. There needs to be more deliberate public awareness from the government. We've done our part on PR, even managing sometimes firefighting. I think when the first headline came out, people were smoking marijuana on the streets. And I had to make a call to the minister and say, you need to put out a statement, because what I just saw at 5 Avenue is crazy, because people didn't read the whole headline. They didn't read the story. They read the headline.
Yeah.
They're like, woo, finally it's been legalized. So these are things we're saying, can our people, can our farmers then get support? Can they get information? Can they get knowledge on how to grow this crop? Can ordinary people just understand what is happening? So much that even people will not just walk into your hemp farm and damage it thinking it's marijuana and they steal it. Because now you need to protect the plant and not the people. With hemp, it's about that. So
at a personal level, having been so passionate about this, where are you with, have you been successful in accomplishing the goals that you set out to accomplish? I mean, you wanted to create jobs. That's not happened yet.
No.
You wanted to raise awareness for investments. That's not happened yet. Where are you in terms of doing your own stock taking?
Well, I'm happy for one thing. The major objective, which was to remove the biggest mountain, which was stopping from all these things you're saying, they are subsequent, really. And that has happened. It's something that was very difficult and heard of and probably seemed impossible at some point. But where we are today, where people are actually having conversations and minuting in government meetings about cannabis and who so and so is growing over there and there, for me, that's exciting. And maybe that's my journey. Going forward, we pass on the baton stick to other people who are going to, personally, I'm not interested in farming. I won't lie. I tried it when I did my demo, and it was so taxing because we have to do a lot of research on the primary production stage, which is the agriculture side of things. But I do see myself in value addition, manufacturing. That's where I want to be, innovative products, and probably products that have never been seen in Europe or whatever, coming out of Zimbabwe, where our young people will come up with solutions. I always say, what if we could fix the potholes using this, if it's that strong as they say, what if it could be one of the solutions? So these are the things that I am interested in seeing in the future. We're not yet done, but I can't say I'm disappointed. I think what I've achieved in the past 5 years is remarkable, considering the terrain that I'm navigating.
So you are 30 years old. You are not yet about to pack and go to do full-time dental surgery, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
The past 5, 6, 10 years have taught you quite a lot as a young person in terms of how to follow your passion as you're lobbying and so forth. What message do you have to the young people that made you want to engage in this when you came back from China, seeing them needing opportunities? What message do you have to young people in terms of how you interact with the government of the day and get the things that you want? What message do you have?
My message is that I understand it's not easy. It's not easy for young people to do, especially, when you get, I think Esidu Mumba said, when you get passionate about something, it always gets political. And this is Africa. I understand how difficult it can be sometimes, but your own principles will get you up there. If you're not going to take shortcuts, you will make it. I'm a strong believer.
If you're not going to take shortcuts, you'll make it.
You make it.
So play straight.
Yes.
Be principled.
Yes, stand your ground, no matter how scary it seems. There are some times where I found myself in a room filled with 7 men, big men, and I'm the only female, and I'm obviously the tiniest person in that room. But I still conveyed my message in a very respectable manner. I'm trying to be very respectful, but I'm trying to get my point across. So I think my message is not just to the young people, but I think we need to understand that the young and the old both have something to bring onto the table. If it is foolishness for the older generation, for the older people to think they can take this country forward alone, but it is also foolishness for the young people to think the same way, because we both have something to give. And what I have tried to do clearly shows that the young and the old can work together. It's not about outdoing each other or saying who can do it better. It's about doing it together.
Did you ever, during this journey, being in the room with these 7 big people and walking away and saying to yourself, it's not worth it?
I don't want to lie, Trevor. My journey, most of the time, when I got to sit with, especially the people in the corridors of power, mostly they are men, right? I never felt intimidated. I never felt like they were trying to muzzle me. They were actually trying to really understand. But I also feel it's more to do with the attitude that I went with. I never went to say, oh, you guys don't think, you guys don't know anything. But I said, guys, you guys are awesome, but there's something you're missing out. So it played a big part in, it was my approach, because I also understood the kind of people I was dealing with. And I've heard stories of women that, when they try to do all these big things, they bump into so many horrible stories. I would lie if I say anyone tried to sexually harass me, intimidate me, or even to take money from me, to say, look, you got to pay a bribe for you to get this thing done, no?
What is it that you think helped you to unlock those doors?
I think I just talk too much. Then someone is worried, like, with the way she talks, that she might just get me in trouble. So even if they wanted to, I wouldn't know. But I was very blunt. I'm very transparent, and I'll just speak my mind. If I don't want, I don't want, and that's it. So
I must say, I can tell from the way that your story got to me. You found a way of getting your story to me.
Oh yes.
Without you talking to me. So clearly, you've mastered this lobbying thing. Talk to young people about how do you get your message without being toxic, without being aggressive. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Maybe I would say it's the art of war. I think you want to get into that later.
Yes, we will.
You need to understand your environment.
Yeah.
Okay, firstly, before you try to get to that point, what's the environment like? What are the possible hindrances? You study that. In Zimbabwe, we understand our political terrain is it's not easy to navigate. So when you decide, okay, I've got a brilliant idea, maybe you've got an innovative idea in energy. Let's just give an example. You now need to understand who is likely to attack this idea before you even talk about it. I've met many people say my project proposal was stolen, then they gave it to so and so and so and so. Don't. I never had a project proposal. Up to this day, people don't have my business model. You have no clue how many times they've asked for it. No, but we need your business model. I know what will happen. The real business idea that I have as Dr. Maroveke, nobody has it. I want them to do their businesses. Then I'll do my own thing. So when you've got your business proposal, you don't share that with people. You have to understand who's likely to fight, who's likely to be threatened, who's likely to, who is responsible for making the final decision or the first decision. These are things you need to sit down and map it out. Now you start lobbying. How do I get to this person? You know where your final, goal is, but before you get there, there are so many doors. How do I make sure that I don't end up being asked for money? If you're a female, how do I make sure I don't end up being asked to do, what do they call the carpet something? I don't know. How do I make sure that this is not going to happen to me? When you understand your whole environment, then you execute. But if you just go in blindly, it's just going to be a problem. So it's understanding those dynamics. It's Zimbabwe. That is just how it is. Make sure out of it, you're not going to find yourself being involved in any corrupt activities. You're not going to shift on your principles.
That's very, so it's really understanding the terrain, but also being confident on your own facts and what you're working on, isn't it?
Talk to people. There are so many people, some whom you've interviewed. I approached them. So this is what I want to do. Do you see any value in this? Do you really believe that I'm making sense? And when because for my journey, I had to wake up and be a lawyer, an economist overnight, and a politician overnight, Trevor. But I had mentors. I had people say, Zoe, that's dangerous. Don't go there. 10 left, 10 right. And they're all in the background. People don't even know that so and so is actually part of Zoe's journey. But I had so many people that I would identify and say, okay, so and so, I've heard that he's good at this. Or
so you've got people that have been mentoring you.
Yes. Yes.
How important has that been for you?
That has played a major, it's very significant because there are so many times I wanted to do things, but I would say, I cannot make this decision until I ask so-and-so. I'll make my call. I don't even have to have meetings. These people are like, okay, did you consider this? I'm like, no. It's like, so don't do it.
Okay.
My next move is this. They'll say, no. And I would ask 3 people on the same issue just to check and balance. You understand? I had these people in the background. They would never show up, but they always helped me. So as a young person, find people you trust. Find people who've achieved something greater than what you want to achieve. They will always help you because there's experience, there's maturity, there's so much wisdom that you can borrow from. And of course, most of my friends are in the older generation because I want to partake of that wisdom before it crosses over. So it helped me a lot. So as a young person, I would definitely say there's so much to learn from our fellow young people, but I don't have that much experience. If a 30-year-old here comes, I can only give them so much. But trust me, if they interact with a business person who's been in business for the past 30 years, they will learn so much more. So let's appreciate each other as the young and old. Yeah.
We need each other. We all need each other.
Definitely.
Let's move on to my favorite part of the show, which is the books. Zoe. And I love the books that you're going to recommend, and I want us to discuss them. The first one is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Why are you recommending that book to
Well, of
our
course,
book lovers?
well, I'm a bit biased, because I have this Chinese background in me. But to be honest, Trevor, at some point I actually wanted to enroll. I wanted to go into military. I wanted to be a soldier. And when I came back, I thought I still had an opportunity to go in as a professional, but Hemp took over me. I think it's a good book because it teaches you that life generally is like warfare. And if you understand yourself, because you can never control the other person, you can never really know so much more about what the next person is going to do. But you need to know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses. Try as much to understand your enemy. It's the worst thing to just move around in life and you don't even know who your enemy is. Identifying them is a blessing, and understanding them is another thing altogether. So I think it's a very, it will always be a relevant book. It's timeless, because in business it can help you. If you're an athlete, if you're in politics, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. If you're in leadership, it can also help you so much. Yeah.
The other book is a book I've tried to read, and I can never be able to finish it. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
I didn't finish it either.
Yeah.
I didn't finish it either. But when my uncle recommended the book to me, he said, you know what? When you read that book, you're gonna tell me something. The first thing I said to him when I read the first few, I was like, oh, now I realize I'm not crazy. That's what I realized. I'm not crazy, because there was so much truth in the things that I believed, that I felt I'd found out about life by myself, and then I'm seeing it being confirmed by this writer who's long gone, and I'm like, I'm not crazy. There's power in my words. There's power in my thoughts. You know, if I project something, and there's so many things that have manifested today, Trevor. I say I will tell you. I sat down and I thought about these things, and they manifested. So. Think and Grow Rich, it's profound. Yeah,
and your last book?
Fascinating Woman.
Who wrote Fascinating Woman?
It just slipped my yeah.
Okay.
Fascinating Womanhood is a great book when you realize that you're a woman and it's not going to change. Yeah. I don't want to be a man, but I want to harness the feminine energy. It's beautiful to be a woman, because I've also understood the power of women and how influential they can be. But there's nothing more beautiful in understanding what you really are. And it's a book that has got a lot of secrets, which I can't share with you right now because you're a guy. But yeah, it's got a lot of secrets, you know, for women. And it's a book that actually changes. It does not really support the independent woman we talk of today. It's actually, women shouldn't be working so hard, they should be housewives. But in all of that, there's so much power that comes with. It's an interesting book, and it's helped me as somebody who's been in these very aggressive spaces to say, look, you can still wear, floral clothes and, still be in a meeting with big men and still a girly. It's okay. Your power is within. It's not without. So yeah, it's a powerful book. I recommend a lot of young women who intend to be wives and mothers and powerful women in society to read. Yeah.
So Zoe, I'm sorry, they say it's rude to mention a woman's age, but in this show I love doing that, because for me it's just how excited I am about the future that's ahead of you. You're 30 years old. What's the next big thing for you? When you sit here, what is Zoe going to be like in the next 10 years? You'll be 40. In the next 20 years, you'll be 50. What's the next big thing for Zoe?
I'll just tell you the next 10 years. Let's not get into that, because I don't want to scare people out there.
Right.
Well, of course, I do want to go back to school. I'm planning on practicing law. I want to start a family. I'm not yet a mother, and I'm really excited. I want to have that experience. But I do see myself getting into business. Particularly, like I mentioned, I'm interested in the manufacturing side of industrial hemp. Yeah, I'm a dentist, but I see myself doing my part-time dentistry. I don't see myself ever again going into full-time dentistry or taking up any further studies in that field, but definitely going for law.
Fascinating, fascinating. Zoe, it's been awesome talking to you. I love talking to young people with the energy that you have, with the passion for our country, with the love for our country and the love for ourselves, and clearly the love that you have for yourself. It says to me that this country has so much going for it. And I'm coming across so many young people like you who've got the energy, who've got the ideas, and I'm praying and hoping that the next 10 years, all the dreams that you have do come through. And I know you're not going to share with us your business plan concerning the hemp, but we're looking forward to that. So we wish you all the very best, and thank you for creating the time to come and chat with us. This conversation, I have no doubt, is going to be very inspirational to a lot of people.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Allow me now to tend to our viewers who are in Zimbabwe, on the continent and all over the diaspora, who follow this show every week. To thank you for watching. This is a weekly show. We come out every Monday at 7 a.m. on YouTube. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, please click on this subscribe button and you get a notification every time we have one of these quality conversations. We have also created a link for a podcast. Click onto the link below this conversation and you'll find a podcast for your listening pleasure. So until the next episode, thank you all for watching and cheers.